Jed Babin of the American Spectator with us now. And Jed, how are you, sir?
Well, not bad, all things considered. How are you?
I'm good. Typically it's kind of quiet in D.C. in the summer, but this is going to be an incredibly busy week in Washington. I mean, we had the decision on SB 1070 today. Thursday, we have the contempt of Congress vote. We have the Obamacare decision coming down. I mean, there's going to be a lot of activity this week, sir.
Well, it's a lot of fun. I was looking at my delivery of the new Almanac of American Politics, and it seems like it's a lot thicker this year than it was last year. There's just too much SGO stuff going on.
I guess so. And we also have, I guess, the EU summit on Thursday as well, looking even, further afield here. But you're writing in the American Spectator about Obama's Watergate, and you say that presidential claims of executive privilege are the haute cuisine of politics, served in a covered dish. They're mysteries that tantalize, the aromas evoking everything that the mind can conjure. What is the president doing here by invoking executive privilege? What is he doing to himself, and what is he doing really to, the idea of executive privilege?
Well, number one, he's helping himself, and he's helping Eric Holder. Before the president invoked executive privilege, the question of the contempt vote in the House on Thursday could have held some criminal law consequences for the Attorney General. He might have gone to jail. But by asserting executive privilege, Obama has cut that off. Under the law, once the executive privilege assertion has been made, contempt of Congress can no longer be a criminal matter. The second thing that Obama is doing, and it really helps him a lot more than anybody else, he's pushing the issue back past the election. We've seen this so many times, Cam, and so many other things that he's done. The real issue here is, well, can I delay any consequences? Can I delay any real inquiry until after the November 6th election? And, of course, that's what Obama's doing. There's no way. I mean, I guess it's within the realm of possibilities, but there's no real practical way the courts are going to deal with this, and we'll never learn more about Eric Holder and Fast and Furious before November 6th.
We heard, and this is what's so frustrating, because if you saw Representative Issa on Fox News Sunday yesterday, he talked about a specific email that former ATF Director Ken Melson told congressional investigators he sent. Even Eric Holder himself says that this isn't covered under executive privilege, and yet they haven't turned over this particular email, despite the fact that it doesn't even fall under executive privilege claims.
Well, that's really the issue that I'm raising in my column in the Spectator today. The real point that I'm making is something I don't think has been concentrated on before. We're talking an awful lot about, whether Fast and Furious was bad. Yeah, it was. Whether Obama should be asserting executive privilege over this. No, he shouldn't. And all the criminal contempt proceedings and all the rest of that. The issue to me comes down to the fact that this is yet another abuse of presidential power. The executive privilege doctrine, which is founded in the Constitution, only goes to some very certain things. Number one, the presidential communications privilege, which basically says, when the president is doing his business and talking to his advisors and so forth, that can be an area of executive privilege that no one can see. Even Congress. The separation of powers requires the Congress to really not get into things that the president is doing in his execution of his duties within the presidential office.
Right.
The second part of it, and it's really derivative of that, it's called the deliberative process. And basically it's when the advisors to a president are going out to lower-ranking federal officials and saying, hey, what do you know about this? We need to come up with a recommendation. And that, to a degree, can be subject to an executive privilege. The problem we have here is that when Obama is going and invoking executive privilege on Fast and Furious, as he did last week, he is going far beyond all of those things to cover a lot of documents which apparently do not have anything to do with either part of the executive privilege.
Right.
And that's the big issue. This is another expansion of presidential power. It's another, really, an affront to our Constitution. And I think that a large part of this eventually will be struck down by the courts.
We've seen, Jed, not a lot of cover for Obama. Look, in terms of Fast and Furious, generally speaking, yes, there's been a tremendous amount of media misrepresentation out there. But, even the Washington Post editorial page very reluctantly said, well, yeah, it kind of looks like Congress, should have the ability to see these documents. I've not seen a lot of people rise to the defense, legally speaking, of this claim of executive privilege.
No, and I don't think you will. But on the other side of the coin, Cam, I mean, this is kind of an inside the Beltway issue. You know, people like you and me chew on this stuff all the time.
Right.
But outside the Beltway, where normal America resides, I don't know that people really care enough about this.
You know, and I'm sure not everybody does. But there's a subset of individuals, and I think the Democrats made the mistake of making executive privilege an issue back in 2007 with the firings of the U.S. attorney, and ultimately the House Oversight Committee, back when Nancy Pelosi was the Speaker of the House, did their own investigation of DOJ, and they too sought to hold Harriet Miers in contempt of Congress. They also sought, it was Alberto Gonzales that they tried to hold in contempt of Congress as well, right?
Right, I believe that's correct.
So, I think that they actually made this an issue 5 years ago. And, you're right. Low-intensity voters, people who really don't pay a lot of attention to politics, a lot of this stuff is probably going to fly right over their heads. But I got to think that there is some pool of voters out there who once again find themselves disappointed in Barack Obama, a guy who said that he was going to come to D.C. and be different than George Bush. Now they're actually holding up the Bush administration as an example of how administration should act.
Yeah, well, let's not get carried away here. But the real issue here, and you were right. I mean, the basic point on the Bush U.S. attorney's firings issue was a proper exercise of executive privilege because it was a debate between the president and his immediate advisors, and that was all there is to it. In this case, though, and this is why I think this is different, and it's much more important. You have the president going out, and this is a president who's got a track record. I mean, this is a guy who, did all the things he did on illegal immigration a couple of weeks ago, and really, basically seized power he's not entitled to under the Constitution. This is a president who made so-called recess appointments back in January when the Senate was still in session. He does not really have a very friendly attitude towards our Constitution. And this, again, is another one of those exercises. I think people need to really take a hard look at what Barack Obama's track record is, the way he has been seizing power that the president's not supposed to have, the way he's been really abusing power that was not delegated to him anyway under the Constitution. This is a very big issue.
Absolutely.
And this is something that people ought to really have in their minds when they go to vote in November.
Absolutely. Hey, Jed, thank you so much, sir, for coming on the program, and look forward to doing it again soon.
Sounds like a plan, sir.